State Governor Nasir El-Rufai. The party's National Working Committee says El-Rufai forged membership documents aligned with rival parties and attempted to hijack internal structures. However, the Kaduna State chapter of the SDP has now openly refuted these allegations, while the NWC insists that El-Rufai never registered at the ward level. The Kaduna State chapter says he met all constitutional requirements and accuses those behind the suspension of acting without authority. Joining us live from Abuja is News Central's Sagir Ibrahim, who's been following developments around these unfolding disputes. Sagir, many thanks for joining us. The national leadership says El-Rufai has been barred or banned from the party for 30 years. What exactly are the allegations against him?
Thank you so much for having me on the news. These are the new advances that we're getting. I mean, one moment he was barred for 30 years, another moment is whoever it was that made the publication or put out that statement is not representative of the SDP. So initially there was some form of concern that the former governor of Kaduna State and former minister of the FCT, Malam Nasir El-Rufai, had found himself in proverbial hot waters over this suspension issue. But then it's looking more like it's more of the party affair rather than it's an affair that affects the individual himself, Malam Nasir El-Rufai. So since then, like you mentioned, we've seen the publicity secretary of the state chapter of the SDP come out to say, as a matter of fact, to do for Libra, the purported national publicity secretary of the SDP, who had put out that statement accusing El-Rufai for allegations of manipulating internal processes, attempting to destabilize the party through unconstitutional actions, effective political maneuvers, and also forcefully parading himself as a member of the party. Well, at this point, what we're getting is even Professor Libra, who is the purported national publicity secretary, is not and was not given the powers to act in the capacity that he did. So this is now the tale of who said what and who is saying the truth and who is telling a lie. So what we're doing now is observing to see how this degenerates. But what is definitely certain is that it's seeming like the SDP may have started or is about to have its own set of internal wranglings. I mean, it started with the suspension of its national chairman and, of course, its national auditor and likewise the national youth leader of the party. And then here we are following with the suspension of Malam Nasir El-Rufai as a member of the party.
Right.
These are the developments, of course, at the moment.
But the Kaduna State chapter has completely denied that expulsion and said that whoever is behind this is clearly suspicious and said that he met all constitutional requirements for him to be a member at the state level. What is their stance at this time?
Well, right now we're actually waiting for an official reaction of the national body as a whole, the NWC, if you would call it that, because if the state chapter of the party is saying that the publicity secretary, national publicity secretary, is in fact not the person who released that statement, because Darius Kura had mentioned Darius Kura is in fact the state chapter publicity secretary of the SDP, and he had mentioned in his statement that the publicity secretary, the national publicity secretary, whom he knows, her name is Ambassador Judith Shoaibu, and the statement that was that purportedly suspended and barred Malam Nasir El-Rufai for 30 years was signed by one who was Libra. So he is saying so long as that statement was not signed by the publicity secretary whom he knows to be Judith Shoaibu, whoever it was that made that publication did not have the authority of the NWC to do so. And now what this looks like for us who are observing the trend is, like I mentioned, that the party may have started in what many would describe as the commencement of its own internal wranglings, as we've seen in some of the major political parties. Talk about the NNPP that has been battling with an identity issue as well. We have a faction that claims to be the authentic NNPP being led by the major Agbo faction. We have another one led by the Kwankwasia, the head of the Kwankwasia movement, Rabi Musa Kwankwasu. It's a similar issue with the PDP. It's a similar issue with the Labour Party. Initially, we had thought that the SDP was going to be the beautiful bride, the proverbial beautiful bride, as you would call it, up until the issues regarding suspension of its national chairman, allegation and accusation of financial malfeasance and financial mismanagement, and then right now the suspension of Malam Nasir El-Rufai, which many people actually expected or saw coming, if you would call it that, especially considering the fact that Nasir El-Rufai has been a known friend, an associate of the suspended national chairman. So many have described this issue as just one that is riddled with vendetta, in that watching the party of those who are loyalists to the suspended national chairman.
It's very interesting, just the way you really tell. It seems to be the curse of the opposition at this point. Only time will tell who will be the beautiful bride and who can, sway Nigeria in terms of opposition at this point and doesn't have skeletons in their closets and have an identity crisis. Only time will tell. Sagir, I want to say thank you for joining us. Sagir Ibrahim, our correspondent live from Abuja, giving us update following the 30-year ban from the SDP.